Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining me today for this very, very important topic on trauma. It's a topic that is almost too big to talk in 1 hour. It's a topic that is gaining more popularity, more awareness, which I'm very happy. And in the same time, as it comes into the awareness of many people, I find it important to offer and to keep a bigger understanding of what trauma is, what it means. And that's really the goal of today. So, as I was preparing for this session, and I took a long time to prepare before I put it in paper, I realized that I'm really preparing. The end result was really like an outline of a book or a very extensive seminar that includes information from multiple traditions and multiple medical systems and multiple points of view and multiple philosophies with practices, different kind of meditation and subtleties and exercises, etc. So I really am sharing with you. I was debating, how far should I really go? Like how far should I share? And so if I get a little bit carried away, my apologies in advance. It's just that I'm excited about the topic, and my heart just wants to share all this information. But with this in mind, I want us a little bit to try to stay out of our head. So the information will have a certain transmission quality, a certain vibrational quality that really can go into our being and hopefully have an effect by opening a door, by introducing an understanding. So with this in mind, I want to take literally 2 minutes and just center into our being. So you can sit straight and just feel your sitting bone relaxing, falling into your seat. Whatever is your seat. If you're sitting on a chair, if you're sitting on the ground on a cushion, it doesn't matter. And this sense of relaxation, of letting go, of dropping, is especially important in the context of trauma, where we hold, where we grasp, where we're in a survival mode. There's always a contraction. So we basically just let go. And we can feel how the whole pelvis opens up. And in the same time, there's a certain flexibility and tone in the perineum, the area between the genitalia and the anus, that allows all our spine to rise all the way to the top. Your chin a little bit inside, your shoulders relax, your hands wrapping your knees. And just let your diaphragm move gently. So when you inhale, the diaphragm comes down and your lungs expand, your abdomen kind of bulges out, and you exhale through the nose or through the mouth. And within it, you just let your attention open to all directions. We're doing it a little bit different today, less structured. And as your breathing becomes very smooth, you bring into your awareness, into your being, this recognition that every living being wants to be happy. Each of us wants to be happy. Each person that we know wants to be happy. It allows us to open our heart towards ourselves and towards others. And with this, we say hello to our heart. We bring our hands to the chest. I think you can see, but sometimes the actual picture is bigger than what I see. So you can see my hand in the chest, and you can feel the warmth of the heart and the warmth of pericardium 8, the palace of labor, where the heart healing power is expressed. You can feel this circuit of healing that generates heat and warmth and nourishment that expands throughout your chest. And as it expands, it softens our heart. It softens our edges, our reactivity, together with the sense of openness and relaxation. Opened outwardly to all directions and opened inwardly to any sensations in the body. And we try to keep this openness as we relax into this webinar. You can put your hands down. So welcome again, everyone. I mentioned the challenge in talking about trauma in such a limited time. So today, for me, it's more of an introduction. Introduction not to the topic of trauma, but to the depth of what trauma is. So I want to start with areas of understanding that are not commonly presented. And this is really understanding the energetic aspects of trauma. Drawing a lot from Chinese medicine, more esoteric Chinese medicine, and from different insights. And once we understand the energetics of trauma, the relationship of trauma to time and space, also understanding the biology and physiology of trauma, the effects it has on us, and of course, what we can do about it. And I want to start by revisiting very quickly the survival response and the survival paradox, also the title of my book, in relationship to trauma. So the survival paradox, and some of you may have heard it, and every time there's another angle, is a paradox, and it's very fundamental to our life, to our existence. So this paradox is in that whatever keeps us survive, it's also what causes us suffering and pains and difficulties. Same thing. So we're all built innately to survive. It's really what keeps us alive. We need it. It's part of the species, it's part of evolution. But because it's innate in us, it's also automated in us through the nervous system, through the autonomic nervous system, which means it's automated, we don't control it. So this is our built-in survival response. And the sympathetic system, as you all know, reacts in a few highways. It either fights as part of protection, which equates to an inflammatory process, to a struggle, to an aggressive reactivity, reacting outward, or we shut down. We shield ourselves. This is a fear aspect. We get frozen, or we run away. So fight, fear, or flight. So the two fundamental movements are the movement of fighting and the movement of fight and flight. Specifically in trauma, the response can shift. Well, initially at the time of the generation of trauma, we often fight. And then later on, we run away or we shut down. Very, very common. And because of the potential to be in to face a lot of challenges and to be very reactive as a result, we can live our life in a chronic sympathetic tone, in a chronic reactive tone, where we are always on alert. We're always on alert. And this, of course, will affect our nervous system, will generate neuroinflammation, which will affect the whole body, but will also affect the biochemical system, our biochemistry, and our metabolism, all the way to shifting the metabolism of the cell to a survival mode, to glycolysis, to very fast metabolism and highly inefficient metabolism with very high cost from the point of view of damages. So this is this cascade of movement that moves on. And it's important to understand it in general, to see this movement from something that is very vague, like anything that reacts, anything that triggers a survival response. It can be a chemical, a pesticide, a mycotoxin, a heavy metal. It can be stress. It can be danger of any kind. It can be an emotional stimulation. It can be danger to our life. It can be terrible abuse. It can be different things. And then we have the reactivity to it, the response to it. So this is a little bit very quickly looking at the survival paradox, understanding that it is a paradox, that we have to find a way to be able to survive in a more harmonious way. For example, this broadcast is done from Hawaii. And I was taking a walk a few days ago in the big island of Hawaii, and this island is considered the healing island. And it's the most isolated place in the world, right? These islands are thousands of miles from any other land. So it's really some kind of a heaven, an isolated area. And as such, many species are not endangered here. And sometimes even regular animals behave different. So I was seeing one of the wild chickens and a wild cat. And they were just walking one next to the other. Well, usually the cat will try to chase the chicken and eat it up. Their survival response was not triggered. Their survival response was a response of community, of balance, of there is place for both of us in this place. So this is a very healthy survival response. And we know that communities that are based on compassion, on love, survive better. They actually do better as communities, not only as people. So this is not like a wishy-washy idea. So now that we looked a little bit into the survival response, we want to look at what is trauma. This very, very, very big word that we use a lot. So trauma can and is very often defined based on events of our life. Something in our life that triggered a response and it gets stuck in us. And it can be something, an event in our life. It can be an event in our ancestors' life that has affected us genetically, but mainly epigenetically. And again, I apologize for not being able to go into every term at length. And also a difficult event in the lives of those close to us not only as siblings, family, but close to us as community. You can see often trauma of a community, trauma of a country, trauma of a nation. I mean, it's not unusual. And then these events will have an effect on us. And that's very common. I've been interviewing wonderful people. I'm a co-host of the Trauma to Transcendence Summit with Dawson Church and some water. And so I got to interview some amazing people. And each of them has their point of view of how the trauma was created in life. Some are more from a psychological, some are more from what it did with their body. And some have a very big spiritual view, but different views. I want to look at trauma a little bit deeper. I want to look at how we, as living beings, as human, but in general, as living beings, function in our reality. Because if we look at our reality, everything that we experience is an expression of space and time. What do I mean when I say it's an expression of space and time? I mean that there is a location, a place we are, and there is a certain quality of spaciousness in our body. And within where we are, we either stay in the same place or we move. We create a distance by movement. The distance that we move or the spaciousness is a function of time, of movement in time. If we want to move from point A to point B, and we have very little time, we'll move very fast, and it will create friction. It will create speed. It will create more reactivity. If we move very slow, or we move in a harmonious way, it will create less friction. We know, for example, that from even Newton's law, even from classical physics, that there is, that the steady state of movement is either that we don't move or we move at the same speed, right? So it's very interesting that movement at the same speed is very similar to not moving at all. That's a fundamental understanding, because to move in the same speed, there has to be a very even flow without turbulence, without turmoil. And this, by the way, will affect how our blood circulates in our vessels, but really how we flow in our life. And often, for example, when we meditate, we focus mainly on being quiet, on being still. But the moment there is movement, we lose everything. So that's really, it's even not half of the picture. It's less than half of the picture, because most of the time, we are in movement. What do I mean? Every time you think, there's a movement of your mind. Every time you do a movement in your body, there is a movement. Every time your lungs move and your chest opens and closes, there is a movement. Every time your heart contracts, it's different when the heart feels and accepts and when the heart puts out, right? It's receiving and sending, different places. So it's important to really understand this concept, because it will really affect our understanding of trauma. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is that my interest is for you to understand it not only mentally, but to understand it somatically and to understand it in your being, in your heart. That's where the transformation happens. So what does it mean to be at the flow? If we are moving at the same pace all the time, right? For there to be no difference between stillness and movement, we have to move at the same pace, right? Like if we are moving in a train and we look inside the train, there's no movement. When we look outside, everything is moving backward. Why? Because we are moving forward. So that's very important. So if we want to move at the flow, we don't want to project into the future. When we project into the future, that's a projection of emotion and psychology ahead of the moment. So issues like fears, like anxiety, like anticipation. If we go back to the past, it's unresolved grief and imbalanced sadness and guilt feeling. But we can also hold to the present, be obsessed about the present. That's what obsession is about. We actually hold to the present. And that, as a side comment, is one of the pitfalls of mindful meditation, that we can hold to the present, we can hold to the quiet, and we can freeze it. And when you freeze water, it turns into ice. There is no movement. So the experience, from a Buddhist perspective, the images is like writing in water. You try to write in water, you can write, and then nothing is left. There is no trace. Or the other image is like a bird flying in the sky. So the bird flies and then passes, and the sky is the same. And again, we can talk a lot about this concept because there are different levels. But really, what it means practically, what does it mean? It really means that when we have a thought, when we have a feeling, when we have an experience, there's a certain response to the thought, to the feeling, to the experience, and then it just vanishes away. And ideally, we come to the same place where there is no movement. And again, I apologize because as I contemplated, I realized how complex it can be, and actually how profound it is. So if you feel, oh, what's the big deal? Then I simply didn't do a good job, or it requires, and I know it requires more time to really understand, because there are many subtleties, especially if there are people here in the audience who are interested in meditation. It's a big difference. And if we have time with my ambitious schedule, I will show some very unique diagram that explain it. So why am I telling you all of this? Because different experiences are going to trigger different responses. So if you say, okay, oh, I want to go get a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or whatever, then the thought comes and it goes, right? The impression is very short. But if somebody tries to chase you with a gun and you just escaped, you're going to think about it a little bit longer than a few seconds. So there is an experience. The experience leaves an impression. It triggers a reaction, and it takes longer to resolve. Anything that is not resolved, that keeps affecting us, we keep going back to, leaves a scar, right? It leaves a place that already happened. It's gone. It's bridge under, it's water under the bridge. It's not bridge under the water. It's water under the bridge, but from the perspective of the person, they are caught in the bridge, which is very common and understandable when it's a very powerful, unexpected event. And in this sense, this scar is a trauma. So trauma is really stuckness in time. Trauma is stuckness in time that triggers a reaction that is not related to a balanced response to a current event. That's kind of as I contemplate. And again, these definitions are, I have a little bit of my knowledge and life experience and studies, but then these definitions don't come to me because I read them in the book. They are my inner insight as a result of the different processes. So really, when you have a trigger that creates a response that is not related to a balanced response to a current event, somebody can tell you something and you respond in a way that is so not proportional, right? People with severe PTSD, suddenly they will get palpitation and sweats and fear, and the whole body will shake. And it's completely unrelated to what happened. Or it can happen out of the blue because they are responding, they are reacting to a trigger that was never resolved. Now, naturally, our life is full of endless traumas. From very short traumas that get resolved within a day or two or a week, to multiple mini traumas, repeated traumas that slowly will create a scar, to major ones that we just can't overcome. So when we function in time, when you are listening to me right now, your experience of life, my experience of life, and our response to the moment is a culmination of this moment as if nothing happens, and in the same time, a result of endless feedback from what happened to us in the past, from what happened to our ancestors, and this is very hard to understand, my apologies, from what happened to us in the future. So the future is affecting us right now, just like the past, we just are not able to comprehend it. So now I'm going to share with you one of my most intimate diagrams that I usually teach only in a retreat environment where I can really connect with people and see them. And I will share this with you now. So I was really debating, should I do it or not? But I want to at least give you like the initial insight. And of course, if anybody comes and spends time with me in a personal face-to-face retreat, once people are in the meditative process after 2 days, then I really introduce this in a more powerful way. And so hopefully we'll have these opportunities in the future. So this is a diagram of us at the moment, right? We are at the present time, at the moment, present right here. And we were present at the moment in the past. So in the past, we were present at the moment. An hour ago, 2 hours ago, a month ago, when we were children, and before we were born, if you believe in reincarnations, and genetically and epigenetically, this reflects our ancestors. And then if we are always in amazing meditation, resting in our, what they say called unborn, timeless, infinite freedom and flow, then we always like this. No matter what happens, we always have a balanced response. It doesn't really exist. And then we're going to do this also in the future, right? And our goal is it's easier to work on what's going to happen in the future. But then, here is what happens when we project into the past. So now we are at the moment, but we are projecting into the past. We can't forget our trauma, and we go into the past. And this is what happens. So you can see that all these moments have different, and there are multiple errors, have different projections into the past. Some of them are very light, not very strong. Some of them are very, very traumatic. So if somebody is sitting here and listening, and 10 years ago, they had a terrible, violent attack or sexual abuse, then they listen to something here, and now their mind is right there, right? Some of you may now completely think about something in the past. So you are here in your body, and your mind is in the past. You're making this movement to the past. But in the same time, we're also projecting into the future. So every time that the reaction to what happened is a projection into the future, anxiety about the future, fear, then we are sending energy into the future. So our response right now is a culmination of our present time that is often barely existing. And again, there are other different explanations and exercises and acupuncture and meditations around each of these. This is really just a taste, just to give you a sense of the profundity, mainly not to oversimplify this whole concept of trauma. And then endless effects from the past, from the present, and from the future. Future, for example, can be our children projecting on us because they are ahead, right? Moving into the past. And people from the past is our ancestors that are moving their effects on us. So this is very common. So for example, in trauma, we had, let's say that we had a trauma right here, okay? So we are right now projecting into the trauma from two different times. And again, there's so many errors. But this effect of the trauma is projecting into how we feel right now. So suddenly you are listening and you are sweating and you are anxious, you have palpitation. This conversation has triggered this event. And sometimes when it's very deep, you don't have to think about the event. You don't have to go into the past. It will automatically trigger into the future. So right here at the moment, you will have severe PTSD symptoms. And I've seen many like this. And also I've seen how the right meditation is just literally almost miraculous because we can undo this thing. It's not easy, but it's totally possible. So the straight line is being at present, just to summarize. And we talked about what the past, present, and future will do to us. So when we look at this past, past, and futures we just shared, we look at it as a momentary experience, as an experience in time, and as a multi-generational experience. So from this perspective, and to really happen, from my experience at least, and again, there are many great, great people who spend all their life just on this topic. But from my experience, the more you understand these multi-generational effects, genetic, epigenetic, and the more you can hold them in your being, the more you can transform and heal in meditation. It's really a requirement. I know that when I give this presentation in retreat, and there are people who heard it 10, 15, 20 times, every time it creates a healing experience for them. That's why I'm taking the time to really do it. It's very important. So now with this, we can revisit the traumatic event. Again, we talked about the trigger and event and our response. So the response is survival driven, right? There are many situations where people got into an extreme survival response. And I have some great examples, but I decided not to give them because of the geopolitical situation in the world. But in principle, and when they were under a survival threat, suddenly all their weaknesses disappeared. They may have been depressed and lethargic, and suddenly they were just so resourceful and so brave. Why? Because they were in a survival mode. And once they got out of the survival situation, and now they were in a safe place where they could snap out of the survival response, that's when the trauma explodes. That's when they feel, oh, I can never forget the day when this started. I still relive the day. So the reliving of the day is going back to the day. That's a movement backward. And it is the day from the past determining how we experience the present. You see, it's a bidirectional, multi-directional movement happening in the same time. And the only solution is to clear these non-vertical effects, to detoxify, to melt, to dissolve. And then the only thing that is left, the only thing that has always been there and always will be there, is this being in this endless, timeless flow. That's the absolute healing. How to do this? There are many different methods. And there is a very interesting correlation between specific methods from a medical point of view, detoxification, discharge elimination, and other methods, regeneration, nourishment, transformation. There is a really nice correlation between the medical methods, the healing methods, and different specific kinds of meditation. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy teaching people, is how to correlate and how to move to the level that you're ready for. So we talk at the time of trauma, it's amazing what we can do, because that's the best we can do. That's what's called, in a very unique system called memory reconsolidation, it's really a pro-symptom. What happened then, the response then, which now is terrible, is the best the body can do. Again, it's survival driven. The problem that we reignite the same pattern. It's actually a neurological pattern. So when we actually can let go of holding to the pattern, even by bringing it to our awareness and meditating. Meditation is essential. Otherwise, it's just a mental exercise. It often will, or potentially, and I'm saying often or potentially because when I had my own experience, it just was gone in 5 minutes and never was back. And then I know I referred a lot of people to a similar method, and my God goodness, it didn't happen to them. I felt so bad. I realized it's the depth of meditation that allows this to happen. But you need the understanding. So later in life, the phenomena of reliving your trauma, it's really, we need to severe this process. So with this in mind, I want now to introduce the meditative and energetic aspect of what I was talking about. So this is us moving in time. Time is moving, and if we're not stuck, we are moving with time, right? And this can be felt in pulse diagnosis, in the way we conduct our life. We are on the flow. Things happens to us, but we are on the straight line. And then something happens. We follow the thought matures, the thought disappears, and we come back to the line. Or an event, we struggle, something that throws us off. It can be a disease. For example, we get a cold, okay? This is very common. You get a cold, you feel this scratchy throat coming. If you throw enough vitamin C, if you throw enough medicinal mushrooms, if you throw enough of whatever you're doing, herbs, then literally you can still come back to the line. But usually when the symptoms start, that's it. Now we have to do the journey. The symptoms get worse. Now there is really a severity of the symptoms. They start going away, and we start coming back to the main line. That's why acute disease is an opportunity to make a shift in chronic conditions. So this is the loop pattern, okay? And that's a very fundamental pattern that we have in Chinese medicine. And it's really described, as I mentioned, in the context of disease, thoughts, events, time cycles, 24 hours, 1 season, 1 year, 7-8 year cycles in men and in women and men, 12-year cycle astrologically, and 1 life cycle. We are born, we make our journey, and then we end and reconnect with this quality that brought us into this world, no matter what your belief system is. It's the same principles energetically. So when we get a trauma, we get caught in this loop. So again, there are endless loops. There are loops that affect all of our being. And there are loops that affect different organs in our being. And every organ actually is in a different place in the time loop, like a season. All of this can be sometime taken into consideration in an acupuncture treatment. But we really travel in these loops, right? We can feel very relaxed. Like, let's say the ones of you who meditate and your mind is very relaxed and quiet, and you have like a thought-free state, and then a thought come and you get lost in the thought, right? That's the loop pattern. Now, if it's a very strong trauma, then this loop keeps on circling. And when it keeps on circling, it can actually have a major effect on us to the place where we really can't be at the moment. This is what happens when people are not in the moment. They are caught in the trauma, they are caught in the loop, and they just can't let go. And what it creates is either a consumption of energy, so chronic fatigue, for example, fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia in many levels is this loop in a certain point in the body that creates a trigger point, right? A hardened point in the body where it's not supposed to be, or eventually a tumor. So we have this system that takes away our energy, so we have less energy for the present time. Or this loop is projecting into our moment imbalanced responses like anxiety and fear and palpitations and sweats and panic, and we react in a disproportional way, very common with trauma. Or the body says it's just too much for me. It's too intense. I can't handle it, which is really almost a universal process. And what does the body do? It takes these loops and it creates a box. It boxes the loop. So now it doesn't bother us. Now, what happened when this box is a separate energetic system? Now, when you box something, you have to keep it. You have to keep it clean. You have to clean up the cell. You have to remove the toxic material. You have to give it nourishment so it consumes energy. And the more boxes, the more traumas you have over your life, you become more and more and more and more fatigued. And more in a place where either your life experience narrows down to an area of safety that you can maneuver between the boxes, or to a place where it's very monotonous because anything that creates any stress or danger will throw you off. And you also see this, by the way, in fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. So this hiding psychologically is really, is really our unconscious. So there's unconscious what we are not aware of from a Freudian point of view, or unconscious where we have amazing insight that are not in our ordinary mind, more like from a Jungian point of view. So there are different approaches. I was just talking about it, and my wife and life partner Gili was explaining to me the difference between the two. And so in the body, we're going to put these boxes in non-active tissues. And where are the non-active tissues? What is the tissue that we don't break down and build again and break down? So the ultimate breakdown and build again is glycogen, glucose storage in the liver. Then we have protein and muscle. But really, our reserve is our fatty tissue. So we will store this in lipids. That's why a lot of toxins are lipid soluble. They are stored in lipids. And that's why these areas will suddenly, out of the blue, show up with a tumor. Classical one is breast cancer, right? The breast is really a fatty tissue mainly. And suddenly you get a tumor. Where did it come out of the blue? It was stored there, and we didn't deal with it. So the box can be psychological, but it can also be physical, and it can also be full of real toxins, like mercury, or like lead going into the bones, etc. And it's often a combination of all. And the body requires energy to maintain these boxes. And this is traumas function often in this way. So let's talk, to close this discussion, about the healing journey and its pitfalls. So really, if we look at trauma and the trigger of trauma, PTSD in a bigger context, but really what I made today is the effort to stay away from labels, to realize we all have traumas at one level or another. Of this life, of past life, of our ancestors. You can read my story, about my grandfather from the Holocaust that I'm named after, and the pain I had in my body. Then when I released the pattern, it just disappeared after 50 years, never to come back. That's an example. So actually there is a story about addressing the scars of survival in my book, one chapter before the last, where I write the story. So trauma, trigger, and PTSD mean that a current event sends us back to the boxed event. And this box is also beaming forward. Remember, I don't want to go back into the diagram, but if we had more time, I would show you this diagram again, and you realize it's beaming into the present. And it affects our present experience. So we go back in time to the moment as a result of a current trigger, and the past trigger responds with a survival response that is affecting us right now. So if we are caught in this trauma, the survival response of the trauma is so easy to trigger that even if it's already happened and it's almost, there's no association. Like somebody changed the lighting in the room, or the temperature changed, right? People have very severe PTSD. Their comfort zones become smaller and smaller and smaller. And the question is, how can we change it? And that's where the different healing methods come in. And I really apologize if I do injustice to all these points. And I do want to share, again, I can't commit, I'm almost committed. I'm actually going to create a course on healing from trauma. I don't know how many meetings, but I want to take people through this in a few hours in multiple sessions with teaching and with meditation and healing. So you can really go through the process. So really the goal of healing from trauma is to be in a place where we respond to a current stimulus based on the present. It doesn't trigger a response or trigger a traumatic response that was used in the past when it was the best solution for survival. And that's really the process of realizing, and that's like the memory reconsolidation allows us open a window for us to let go. Meditation allows us a window to let go all the time. Okay. So within it, a very important step is to step back when these insights come up. So it's not a mental process. You know, you meditate or you relax or you connect with yourself, you drop into yourself and you connect with a certain feeling or memory or something. And you recognize and acknowledge a traumatic event and the response, recognizing it's the best you have done at the moment. When we acknowledge it, we no longer fight. Why did we react like this? Why did we do it? Why didn't it happen differently? What could have done? No, it was the best we could have done, and it is the best. It's remarkable how resourceful our survival drive is for all of us within our baseline. So when we recognize this, there is a rare rewiring opportunity. But when this opportunity comes up, if we address it cognitively, it's not going to work. It's when it comes up, it's the meditation that really helps. And I know I've experienced in my own journey about having this recognition, and it's totally dissipates in a second when I'm meditating, you know, in a certain quality of meditation that is not so easy to teach. And then when I try to kind of stop the meditation and connect with it in a regular, feel it emotionally, yeah, it can be there. But the moment I'm go to my regular state, it's gone. So that's the value of integrating and conceptual, emotional, somatic understanding with the ability to truly let go from a meditation point of view. And that's why meditation enhances everything. That's why open heart medicine, in the way that this whole information kind of like came to my being, was about a system where every other system becomes more effective. So trauma is just an example of this. So in the meditation process, there are different stages. So one stage is becoming the observer, becoming mindful, right? So we are caught in the drama, we are caught in life, and we take a step back. We sit, we relax our breathing, we watch our breath, we follow our thoughts, we look at something in a relaxed way without thinking about something else. Whatever the technique is, it doesn't matter. We are now mindful of something that we are observing. And this is the quality of stepping away from the loop pattern. So, well, ideally, there are diagrams for all of this, but you know what? I'm going to give some extra time, and if people are too tired from this, and I apologize, I do want to, I'll talk for another 10, 15 minutes. It's too important. So my apologies, everybody, if it's a few minutes, but believe me, this is not something you're going to find in any book. So worthwhile staying with me. So this is a loop pattern, okay? So we are caught in the loop, and then now we are more here, and we watch the loop. So if I'm correct about the next diagram, that's what happened. We are here, and we are watching the loop. We are no longer connected to the loop. And that's a big sense of relief. That's a big sense of I'm not caught in the turmoil, right? Like, think about it. You are in the laundry machine, right? That's a good example, right? Or you're stepping out and you're looking at the window and you're watching the laundry machine. A little bit different, right? So you are watching the laundry machine. And that's why mindfulness, that's why stepping back, that's why becoming neutral and non-reactive is such a profound relief, right? The sympathetic response quiets, the blood pressure goes down, the heart rate improves, everything working better. And that's the benefit of mindfulness. And that's why it's so popular, because this is an easy to come by experience. What is between difficult and impossible to come by, at least it took me decades and tens of thousands of hours, is to realize that we are disconnected from the events of reality. And that's why certain meditations have a built-in disconnect. Built-in disconnect. But they are still beneficial. How do we reconnect? By moving from our heart to our head. Sorry, the other way around, of course. By moving, it's funny, I'm like in my heart, I'm thinking about it, so I'm going in the wrong direction. Going from the head to the heart, right? Going from the analysis to just the heart, because the heart always flows, right? You think about the heart. What is the heart? Look at this. The heart puts out blood, and right, by contracting, and then what happens? It's a new aspect of open heart medicine I never taught. And then it comes back to the heart, right? And here is the heart magic. What does the heart do? It doesn't get caught in thinking, in analyzing, oh, I'm going to take this blood, I'm not going to take this blood. It connects to the universe with the breath, right? It connects to the universe, to the endless with the breath, and it gives. So the heart is always here. No matter what experience we have, the heart accepts it, purifies it, and gives it. And that's the absolute healing power of open heart medicine. Really unparalleled compared to this. Yes, it feels very good, and we're at the moment, and thoughts come and go. You can say, oh, I can be quiet, and the thought, if they come, they just go. I stay quiet. We stay quiet and we stay disconnected. And the difference between disconnection and having this experience while you're connected, traditionally it says, it's like the difference between heaven and earth. Completely different life experience. It's between dullness to everything being bright, everything being alive. Because when we are connected, the brightness, the luminosity, the knowing is an aspect of this connection. And in this space, anything can be transformed. That's the healing power. So we talked a little bit about the mindfulness, and then what happened if we can grow through the meditation practice. So we talked about the thought-free state, and then a thought comes, we get lost in it, and then we come back to the non-thought state. And the trauma will keep grabbing our mind, and we get stuck again and again. So I'm going to really there's a lot of more stuff that we're going to share here, but we don't have time for this. So the meditation process has its healing medical parallels. So detoxification is very important. When we have trauma, when we have toxins in our body, we want to detoxify them. So if we can detoxify chemicals that are affecting our neuroinflammation and our neurohormones, it's very helpful. You know, sometimes you can have people who are almost in psychosis and paranoid, and it's just because they were exposed to heavy metals or toxin, or even I've seen cases of extreme EMF. And you clear them, you build the antioxidant system, and suddenly they're back right here and everything goes away. So we have a detoxification in the body where we discharge, we bring it into our awareness, and then we eliminate. So for example, we are We are caught in thought, in the neurosis, in the loop. We are caught in the loop. We are in the laundry machine. And now we slow down. We slow down. We become the observer. And then there is more space between the thoughts, the quality of slowing down. And then what comes? Memories, traumas, emotions, insights comes. So I use the word subconscious, but it's really the unconscious is a better word. In fact, I'm going to change it because I like the Jungian approach. So things that we're not aware of come up, another layer comes up. And what we do, if we have a strong survival tendency, as this come up, we're going to grab them and we're going to hold them, we're going to freeze them. And the moment we freeze them, that's it, there's no more flow. So we can freeze a certain bad memory and invest in it and talk about it and do therapy about it and make our whole life about what happened while life is moving on right now. Or we can just let go. Same with insight. You have an amazing meditation experience and lights and sound and everything. It's just an experience. So the letting go, the same quality of letting go is present all the time because guess what? There are endless layers here. And you just let them go. I often tell the story when I was less trained and I was meditating half a day and working half a day. I would meditate in nature, and my neighbor was very kind. He would let me go to his field, and it was 270 degrees redwoods, and I could watch the sunrise. And I had a notebook, and I would sit, and the thoughts would just come. And I would just write them down, things that I really needed to think about so I don't hold them. And then everything will become quiet. So now I'm more trained. I don't need so much time. It just happens as part of the process in a very short while, or as part of the meditation. But at a stage, it took me decades. So in this part, I was just letting everything come and not holding to it. And if it was so insightful or so difficult or so amazing, just by putting it in the paper was holding it for me. And then I could let go. So that's an example of what happened in a regular meditation. So we have a detoxification in the body, and then we have the breathing. The breathing is a tool. The breathing is a letting go with the exhalation. The nourishment is the inhalation, but mainly the letting go of the exhalation, and then we have the space. When we finish letting go until we start inhaling, there's this space of quietude. And that helps us to connect with this non-thought, with this quiet space that is very healing. But because we are working with the breath, we get less disconnected. And then from a meditation healing process, there are processes that happens to us. The process of acceptance, that is key. I really should spend more time on acceptance, so I'm just mentioning it. And the process of forgiveness. In order to go through forgiveness, we have to go through acceptance. And if we are willing to accept, then instead of pushing away, antidoting, which by the way comes before detoxification, even we antidote, right? Western medicine very often antidotes. Dermatology antidote. The skin is red, we put anti-inflammatory. The skin is dry, we put moisturizer. We're antidoting, right? Also very superficial medicine, just like, less than 1 millimeter, right? That's a very superficial approach. You can see it in the medical system. So we have acceptance and forgiveness, and then we have transformation. Instead of trying to get rid of, we use the difficult experiences as wood for the fire of love, compassion, and nourishment. And that's exclusively done by the heart. That's the basis of Tonglen practice, of sending and receiving, and the first level basis of open heart medicine. So we go through all of this in the meditation. Open heart medicine offers us the door to our infinite healing potential. So the infinite healing power of the heart. The reason is the physiology of the heart. And I'm not going to talk about it now. I've talked about it in many other videos. You can watch it. But One point I want to make about the heart is the quality of the heart to accept. So every cell in our body, every tissue in our body wants to take in what it wants and pushes out what it doesn't want. It has a boundary, a membrane, and it decides what comes in and what goes out. That's part of our self-definition, all the way to the cell, in one level, all the way to the mitochondria within the cell. And that's why in time of cellular danger, which is takes time to get there, the mitochondria will dysfunction, and mitochondrial dysfunction is so universal. So today you're getting a little bit of a deeper understanding. And then the cell detoxifies. The only organ in the body that absolutely accepts dirty blood from everywhere is the heart. So at the core of the heart, different than any other tissue in the body, is the principle of acceptance. So all the body, as part of taking what they want and pushing what they don't want, are in charge of the maintenance of the body. These are the regular 12 channels in Chinese medicine, the maintenance channel. Our evolutionary development, our tikkun, as they say in the Kabbalah, connecting with the divine quality, letting go of, we will say, in Buddhism, we'll say finding our true nature, finding Buddhahood, same principles. Okay, this requires a different system. And at the basis of it is acceptance. And true acceptance means that there is no discrimination. We accept everything. We accept things we like, and we accept things that we don't like. And in this sense, in the deepest levels, there can be a quality of acceptance. It doesn't mean it was okay, because the things are still not good things, but it means that the fight and struggle and reactivity melts away. There can be an acceptance of the traumatic event. And when this happens, when the blood gets to the heart, then through the connection with the infinite healing power of the universe, the blood gets transformed, gets purified, and the heart nourishes without discrimination, including, as many of you have heard before, after the heart contracts and nourishes every tissue in the body, it relaxes and it nourishes itself. So the heart receives dirty blood, accepts, and it gives clean blood. And that's the basis of sending and receiving the practice of Tonglen. But today, we talked a little bit about it in the context of the physiology. Again, this is the first level, and that's the more of the classical Tonglen practice. Open heart medicine offers a whole new level and understanding of Tonglen that really is not in the sources, not in the classical Tonglen. It's really part of this insight that I had. So the transformation happens because we connect with the universe. The ability to truly accept is first because we train that everything, we train that different things need to be accepted. And the usual classical way of training is that we understand that the universality of suffering, and people do what they do out of an inner suffering, and then it allows us to accept what usually we will not accept. In the ultimate, real, absolute level, acceptance is because we recognize the equality, the sameness in everything. And this sameness is a straight line. The sameness is the fact that this straight line has never left the endless expressions, right? If I go back and I show this, this straight line is present in the circle. It has never left the circle. Regular, ordinary reality, experiences that are momentarily, are never disconnected from the timeless presence. And finding this spot, the divine within us, right? They say, whoever is Judeo or Christian, we are made in the image of God. We are made, this is the quality of the divine. It's timeless, it's beyond our body, and it's present in everything. We just lost this ability, right? So they say we fall from heaven, but heaven is everywhere. That's really the capacity to heal from traumas. And I have, this is not the right place and time to share, but I've seen the most remarkable, amazing healing experience from traumas of people when we did a more intense retreat, things that are like incomprehensible. Because these people were brave enough to face, to accept. And then once they really accepted and they got some support, they were able to forgive. So maybe the last point that I'm just going to touch, the real secret to healing from trauma, once we connect with the heart, which is a whole journey on its own, is to get the tissue where the trauma is stored to accept the healing. And the tissue will be resistant. It will create a microenvironment. It will create isolation. Interesting, my work with galectin-3 around lattice formation relates to this. It will isolate itself from the rest of the body. That's what happened with cancer. That's what happened with autoimmunity, especially with cancer, right? It's a different physiology. It's a different communication system. So how do we get the transformation of the heart, if we did connect and refine it, to get to the target tissue? That's where the inner and secret tongue in. That's the more advanced part of open heart medicine that I taught for many years outside of the US and not in English. And now I'm committed to start teaching it in English. And that's really why I'm so excited about the Hawaii retreat on September 18th, 21st, because we'll have here the elements of healing, the isolation, right? So we don't get the influences, the elements which are so vivid in the healing quality of the big island, the quality of the flow of the water, always flowing. So once you have the environment and you set the right dietary, the right diet and the exercises and breathing and yoga and qigong and etc., there is an opening for transformation that happens because a group energy is created where people feel so safe. So the creation of an area of safety allows people to let go. So this is really one of the big values of open heart medicine. And I'm shifting to putting more attention into trauma because I'm realizing how prevalent and profound it is in all of us. I know how it changed my life when I healed from the Holocaust trauma that I didn't know was so strong in me. But as they say, I was the first born in a family where my grandfather, 10 of the 12 siblings got killed and nobody talked about it. Killed is not the right word. Got massacred, got murdered, right? Not to talk about the rest of the family from my mother's side, right? And I was the first child and nobody talked about it. Of course, I got the pain of my grandfather that I'm named after. So my process and the psychology around it, I don't often share because it's almost too difficult for people, especially for Jewish people, to accept that such a thing is allowed to be done. So I don't talk about it, definitely not when I don't know who is listening, but that's a value. That's a value. So I want to thank all of you for listening. And my deep apologies for downloading so many concepts, many different decades of learning into this 1 hour and 15 minutes. And I hope it was useful. And I hope that you stay with the process and feel free to share this with your friends. Have them sign up. Usually I don't talk to people about signing for the newsletter and doing all of this stuff. But really, I mean, what I'm offering is unique. It's really a result of decades and decades and decades of training. So I really I want to thank all of you for being here with me. And I'm sending you my love and hugging all of you with my heart, with a true aspiration. May all beings find happiness. You know, there's a universal prayer at this very moment for the people and the nation of the earth. May not even the names, disease, famine, war be suffering. Rather, may their moral conduct, merit, wealth, and prosperity increase. And may supreme good fortune and well-being always arise for them. Praying for the peace and healing for everyone, everywhere. Thank you very much.